I'm John Foster. Join me for a behind the scenes look at Ventura County archaeology. Do you like mysteries? Do you like puzzles? Do you like abject poverty? Then archaeology is for you. So join me today as we look back at a project I did in 1991 in downtown Ventura. Archaeology in many ways is like piecing a puzzle together. You do your research, review previous reports for the area, and develop expectations about what you're going to find. But you can find the unexpected and the inexplicable. So your detective skills come forward and you check all the likely suspects. Just when you think you have nailed a possible explanation, you find out that the first puzzle hides a second, an even more important puzzle, one that is unique to Ventura County and one of only a few in the state of California. This episode covers the first puzzle, and it's called Archaeologists Tackle the Hard Questions. Why there were no bottles of beer on the wall? We finally know the answer, or do we? Ventura has a rich and diverse history, and that is reflected in the archaeological sites and features that are buried just below the streets and sidewalks that you travel when in Ventura. So where are the resources, you ask? In reality, we really don't know. The city has never conducted an archaeological survey of its jurisdiction, much less the historical downtown, where there are both historic and prehistoric resources. The reason for this gap in knowledge will be covered in another video. Ironically, this lack of information proved to be an expensive oversight when the city of Ventura took possession of the Verano grocery store and Wilson Studio at East Main Street and Figueroa Alley, opposite the Mission. As an aside, I used to buy my lunch at Verano's in the early 1970s when I worked on the archaeological site. It's now the Albinger Archaeological Museum. Little did I dream that 18 years later, I'd be working in the same building, or more precisely, under that building and the one adjacent. In 1991, the City Redevelopment Agency was conducting work on the south half of Prados in the adjacent place called Wilson Studio. The work they were doing involved removing the flooring for the south half of the two structures. As the floorboards came up, the workers gaped in astonishment at what they had exposed, which was thousands of historical artifacts. Docents from the Ventura County Museum were consulted, and our firm Greenwood & Associates was brought in by the city to evaluate the situation. To put it mildly, we were astounded by the glittering carpet of bottles and shards and the sheer quantity of artifacts. The two crawl spaces were marked off in a grid. Archaeologists always use a grid to do their collecting, except when they don't. We brought in stacks of large paper bags that collect more than 27 cubic feet of these mostly glass artifacts. The majority of recovered materials were beer and alcohol related, with some condiments, pickle jars, and a few medicine bottles included. There were also a few Chinese artifacts dating to the Ventura Chinatown that was behind Pranos and other stores along Main Street. Bottles like these can be easily dated, particularly if they have maker's marks on them. Dating of the bottles indicated a rough time span of the 1880s-1890s. The vast majority of these bottles were alcoholic in nature. Research at the museum indicated that the early uses of the adjacent building was a saloon. Knowing about the saloon suddenly explained all the alcoholic bottles, but why were they hidden under the floors? Typically, the expended bottles were reused or dropped in a trash barrel behind the establishment and subsequently were taken out and dumped at the town dump. Possibly, the Ventura River that wandered close to the town on an occasion was an unwelcome guest along Main Street. The Ortega Adobe on Main Street lost a room during one visit by the river. Obviously, a fair number of bottles were subject to an alternate means of disposal of Pranos by way of the crawl space. Since the bottles were everywhere in their crawl space placement suggests that someone had to crawl between 3 to 15 feet and a 3-foot crawl space to place them in every nook and cranny below the floor. And just to make it more interesting, the back half south of Pranos was also full of the same mix of alcoholic bottles, indicating the same individuals were involved in providing a somewhat dubious bottle installation for the floors of both structures. The question here is why to go all the trouble and effort to throw away bottles when all you have to do is place them in a barrel near the crawl space entry and behind the establishments? Doesn't that sound a little suspicious? While we'll probably never know the answer to why there were no bottles of beer on the wall, we can certainly say that a good number of them wound up under the floor. However, if you can think of a good reason for all the bottles under the floor, feel free to give us an idea in the comments below, and you too could be an archaeologist for a minute. It took a while for all these bottles to be packed and sent to the laboratory for further analysis. With the crawl space now bare, our attention was drawn to a cement wall and floor the bottles had covered that looked very much like a Mission period construct. That is the focus of our second video about this location, and it is called All Washed Up. Can you guess what it is? Thank you for watching. Please visit again for the next exciting video, as we call them, Cures for the Insomniac. Thank you.